A big thing in news circles today is this idea of vaccination passports. We've already talked about the fact that your employer can force you to get the COVID-19 vaccine, even over some objections like religious liberty or disabilities, if they can show that direct connection between you not getting the vaccination and the health and safety of their other workers or their clients. But now we're talking about the next step. Can you be prevented from doing your hobbies, from traveling to other states or countries, from getting a job, from taking your kids to certain schools, from going to certain restaurants, if you don't have that digital fingerprint showing or proving that you have been vaccinated? We've already seen people getting fired and refused service for getting their vaccines in some situations, and then for not getting your vaccines in other situations. So, both sides of the aisle are trying to force their agenda and trying to restrict people that disagree with it, is what it seems like so far. So the real question is this legal? And then the second question is, will it happen? I'm gonna save my answer to the second question until the very end of this video. If you like this content, please hit the like button and subscribe to our page so you can make sure you get all of our future content and can interact in the comments with this community and discuss how this COVID-19 vaccination passport may affect your life. So the first question is, are these vaccine passports or this digital footprint as to whether or not you've gotten the vaccine legal? Can companies make decisions based on this? Can states make decisions as to whether or not you can enter or leave? Can other countries make this decision based on the fact that you've been vaccinated or not? Well, the simple and straightforward answer to that question is yes. It actually is legal, dating all the way back to 1905, where the government could force you to get that smallpox vaccine. So the government can make decisions based on vaccination. That includes whether your kids can go to public school. That includes whether you can enter federal buildings. That includes whether you can travel state to state. And when you talk about country to country, anything goes because each country has their own rules. So some other country could absolutely restrict our entry into it. If you want to travel to Europe and all of them say no unless you're vaccinated, absolutely that's legal, and vice versa. If we don't want to let anybody in here from Africa or China or Asia, wherever, then we can put in a restriction on travel saying unless you've been vaccinated, you can't enter into the United States. So internationally, absolutely it's legal. State to state is a little different. Yes, it's technically legal. We'll talk about whether or not they'll actually do it at the end. So, can private businesses and companies refuse you access or service or they refuse to sell you their products? Can they do it based on a vaccination passport or a digital footprint? The answer is yes. We've talked about this in tons of videos. People should learn by now that private companies can do what they want as long as it's not illegal, and we know it's not illegal already. So can they do it? Sure. No shoes, no shirt, no service. It's the same thing. No vaccination, no service. No vaccination, no products. No vaccination, you can't get food here. You can't enter this store and shop around. You can't come here. You can't skate here. You can't watch this movie in the movie theater if you're not vaccinated. They can do that because they're private companies. We've already seen how Facebook and Twitter can do whatever they want, basically, because they are a private company. They are not bound by some of the same restrictions that the government may be bound by. They're not bound by some of these constitutional restrictions that may deal with the COVID vaccine, which, again, doesn't even apply here because the government can force you to get a vaccine before you can do X, Y, or Z. Now, there are plenty of people that don't have the smallpox vaccine. There are tons of anti-vaxxers out there that homeschool or find schools that don't force you to get this vaccination because they don't have federal funding or public or government funding, which again, that may be something that happens to the people that choose not to get the COVID-19 vaccine. They may just have to make other decisions in their life. They may not be able to travel internationally for a while at least. They may not be able to put their kids in certain schools. They may not be able to go to certain restaurants or go to the movie theater to watch a movie. That could be a reality for people going into the future if they don't want to get this COVID-19 vaccine. Knowing some of them myself, I don't think it's going to change their mind, but that could be something that happens in the future. The ultimate question, will this happen? Do I think this is our reality for the future in America? And the answer is, it depends. It depends on where you live. It depends on what activity you're trying to do. It depends on who owns and runs the company you're trying to work with or buy something for or eat from. Because the decision makers of each state and each individual company are going to be able to control this decision and control this narrative for their state or their company. If you're in a red state, you're probably not going to have a vaccination passport. If you're in a blue state, you probably will. If your company is run by somebody that wants everybody to get vaccinated, then they can implement this vaccination passport requirement. If you're going to a company or a restaurant or a business or whatever that doesn't, then they won't have the vaccination passport requirement. It's going to be a very strange time going into the future because our nation is so divided and 50% of the people voted one way and 50% of the people voted the other. So it could literally be half the states you do have to have the passport, half the states you don't. Half the restaurants you do, half you don't. Half the companies and businesses do, half don't. That, I think, is what's in our near future. Is it really is going to depend on where you live, what you do, and where you go as to whether or not you're going to have this vaccination passport requirement. So what is this vaccination passport actually going to look like? Well, there have already been places that are working on apps that you can put on your phone, or you can put on your Apple Watch, or you can put on your, whatever else people use, Swoop or Swoosh or whatever, where you can just put it and you can show that digital fingerprint basically saying that you have the vaccination, and that's how you get in. They're also creating databases that you can log into and you'll have your name so companies can look it up and see if your name is in this database. The Miami Heat are the first pro sports organization that I've seen that is going to create a vaccinated only section. Meaning if you want to make sure you're safe because you got the vaccination and only be around other people that did, you're going to sit in this section and segregate it basically from all those who haven't gotten vaccinated. I think this division could look very weird and not be great for our country going forward. Everybody's going to disagree whether or not, you're strong on the vaccinations or strong against them, and then you're going to butt heads, which I realize is going to happen, but segregating and separating and not letting people do certain things, I think could create more issues for us in the future. So I think we've got a lot of legal challenges and a lot of pushback ahead of us. Because I think it was Texas or some state that was saying they're actually going to pull government funding for companies that refuse service if you don't have this vaccine passport. But that can go both ways. I'm sure there are going to be states that pull funding if you don't force this vaccine passport, if you don't force people to get vaccinated before doing business with your company. So the government is going to try to assert its control to push whatever agenda the government of that state is, and the federal government may have to step in. The Supreme Court may have to make a decision on some of this stuff, and we may have to get some kind of unity and some kind of commonality through the states, or else it may be a weird segregated country where if you live in Florida, you can go to Texas, but you can't go to California. If you live in California, you can go to New York, but not Florida. And it may just create this weird division in our country even more than it already exists now if all the states are doing their own things and they're basically running as individual little countries, making the decisions that are so different from the rest of the country. We are supposed to be the United States. Not all different states, not this state is its own country. Yes, we do have some autonomy as a state, but it shouldn't be so hard for the citizens of the state to be trapped in their own state and the rules be so vastly different state to state. It kind of feels like that right now. A lot of people are flooding into Florida because they want some of the freedoms that are allowed in Florida, even though they're not, red or Republican or don't support DeSantis or whatever it may be. They just want to do what they want to do. So they come here, even though they may vote against lots of things DeSantis does, including this vaccine stuff. And we'll just see if that changes or if that continues, if people flood from state to state because these states are so different and the rules are so different. So leave a comment below. Let me know what you think it's going to look like. Do you think we're all going to have these vaccine passports before we do anything or get back to normal life at all in this country? Or do you think we're going to let people make their own decisions and just keep riding it out forward? Or is this too dangerous of a situation because of the coronavirus and because of all the stats that we see from the CDC? Let me know what you think. Thanks for listening.